and all I've done is enter my name! Thrill House!
Everywhere I go, everyone is talking about Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Shit, on my way to work I've seen 3 people on my train carriage sit there and play Zelda on their Switch. And while I'm happy people are enjoying their favourite game, I honestly could not care for Zelda.
I'll make a big fucking thing out of it!
However, the one game that has had my attention since I first saw it is Warhammer 40k Boltgun, and boy was I not disappointed.
You will be my bride throughout eternity. We'll share the endless passion of immortal love.
Oh, I can't wait!
Not you! You will be my bride throughout eternity. We'll share the endless passion of immortal love.
Boltgun is a first-person shooter that is designed as if it were, say, an old-school shooter like Doom, and it plays just as much as one, but with a bit of a Warhammer twist on it too. But shit, what else is there to say besides really that Boltgun is a quick, fun, pick-up and play-style game that doesn't require hours upon hours of time to get good or to enjoy yourself.
That looks entertaining. Oh, yeah.
You can simply play a mission or two in one sitting, put it down, and then come back to it the next day for a bit more fun. If you play Doom, Quake, Dark Forces, or really any old school style of shooter, Boltgun will feel very familiar with some modern additions that keep it feeling a bit fresh. Each mission or level starts off with you having to go from point A to point B, collect a key, face off against swarms of enemies in an open style arena. Again, if you've played the modern Doom games, it'll be very familiar. Where Boltgun adds its own spin on combat though is with its weapons. Now pulled straight out of the tabletop game, each weapon has certain strengths which work against certain enemies' toughnesses. It's basically how strong is your weapon to how tough is the enemy. And when you change out your weapons you'll see a strength at the bottom of the screen, and then when you're shooting at your enemies you'll have a little number next to their health which tells you how tough they are or what's their toughness. So a low toughness to a standard weapon like your Boltgun for example, you'll basically take them out in a shot or two. Or you can also use your chainsword if you want to, which is kinda your only melee weapon here. But when going up against something a bit more tough like Chaos Space Marines or Terminators, you'll need to use stronger weapons to take them down, say like the plasma gun. But if you want to, you can still use your standard bolter or your shotgun to take out tougher enemies, but it takes more time because tougher enemies, not a strong weapon, you'll use more ammo to take them out. And that's how the game sort of explains boss fights when they come into play as well. Now, you'll face off against some familiar enemies here if you're a fan of the 40k universe. The game is based around Chaos, and you'll start off with Chaos Cultists before being introduced to Chaos Space Marines, Chaos Terminators, and then there's demons of, the Chaos Gods, both Nurgle, which is the same god that we faced off against in Darktide, and Tzeentch, the god of change and magic.
Change places!
Like with any shooter, you'll start off with the standard easy enemies while you get used to how surprisingly quick your Space Marine moves around the game before being introduced to new enemies, new combinations of hordes to face, and you'll get sweatier and sweatier. With the different enemies and their relevant toughnesses linked to a weapon, it kinda works, at least for me as a fan of the tabletop series, as to why some enemies are spongier than others. When facing off against some bosses, having them, say, with a toughness of 9, and your weapon, say, has a strength of 4 or 5, you'll be unloading a large amount of ammo into taking their health down and taking them out, which, at least for me, worked as an explanation as to why bosses are harder to take out. If you're playing the tabletop game and you've, say, got a Bloodletter and a Space Marine with a Boltgun, the Bloodletter goes down pretty quick. But if you, say, have a Bloodthirster against a Space Marine, a single Space Marine, that's a different story. Graphically, well, Boltgun is timeless because it won't ever look like shit. While yeah, it's not a fantastic looking high detail game, it's set and designed being around a old school shooter from sort of before my time, but that's what gives Boltgun its charm.
He's so ugly! I love him!
But there's still small details too that had me impressed, like say, the lighting, and it would alter and reflect off your Boltgun when moving around in the world, or being able to see banners of Chaos Gods. Where if we look at games like say, Jedi Survivor or Dead Space, sure these games look absolutely brilliant now, but they'll start to show their age at some point, maybe that's in 5 or 10 years time in the future. Hell, I remember Space Marine being a fantastic looking game, and while I still think it looks good, it is starting to show its age a little bit. But the gore in Space Marine, even with its classic video game art style, is still kind of impressive, and it works wonders paired with its fantastic sound design. Each weapon has a unique and devastating sound. Bolt guns are raw and loud, shotguns are meaty and have an echo when an empty shell from the shotgun hits the floor, and the plasma gun sounds like what I pictured it in my head when playing the tabletop game. And still on sound, you're playing as a Stern Guard veteran Space Marine, and they can taunt during combat, and it's actually pretty damn satisfying. It serves no purpose besides dropping some Easter eggs here and there, but it's kinda cool. Finally too, as you play Boltgun, you'll hear the sploosh of enemies exploding during combat and your Space Marine stomping around, reminding me of that Space Marines aren't normal people, but they're a damn beast. Speaking of Space Marine, the story of Boltgun is a soft continuation of the game Space Marine, with references to Inquisitor Drogon and Captain Titus. But regarding its story, you play as a veteran Space Marine who's sent to the Forge world of Grya, where foul energies have been detected. You basically go to the site to investigate the foul energy, capture a power source that was previously held by Inquisitor Drogon, and from here it's pretty straightforward. Do classic shooter-like missions, open doors, clear heretics, rinse and repeat.
Pretty standard, really.
But from that, I wasn't spending more than say 30 to 40 minutes at a time playing Boltgun. I know a mate who's playing it too and he's loving it. He's saying it's the best shooter of the year, and yes, I can definitely agree with that because Call of Duty isn't going to be anywhere near as engaging or as fun as this, I can tell you that.
What did you say?
But because perhaps I didn't grow up with the original Doom or in that era of gaming, I can't find myself sitting and playing something as, say, repetitive as this for more than a mission or two without taking a break and coming back to it later. You know what, as I mentioned earlier, I've seen people play Zelda on a train to work, and from what I hear, Zelda is a very long game, where Boltgun would be great for going to work on a train. It's a quick turn on, it's play, have a bit of fun, and then stop in time to get off the train. But with that, personally, Boltguns didn't click as much as it did with, say, Space Marine for me, and it's for a few reasons. Firstly, the story is basically non-existent. Now, there's a pretty decent cutscene at the start of the game, which funnily enough reminded me of Far Cry Blood Dragon, but between missions it's simple text boxes before the mission starts, and it's a servitor speaking to you, which most of the time I didn't pay attention to because I was in the middle of combat. And yeah, I can see people mentioning saying, well, Doom didn't have any real proper cutscenes or major stories. Both the original and to a lesser extent the modern Doom titles weren't overly heavy on story to some aspects, but the OG Doom was so unique and creative when it releases, that's what it would keep people's attention, and it kept my attention because of that historic value to it. And the new Doom games do have platforming sections and some cutscenes and some sweet boss introductions which kept me a bit engaged rather than just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Now that's not to say Boltgun is a bad game, hell no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that the story is kinda lacking, and you may not have an issue with this, it's just something to note if you prefer stories in your games. Secondly, this is a small thing to mention, sure, and most of these are small mentions anyways, so yeah, but there's no co-op in the game, and co-op would have been perfect for this.
We're here to fuck shit up.
The option to do the game as a squad of Marines rather than just one veteran, where similar to playing, say, Space Marine before it, we could pick a class that has a certain style of weapons or abilities or attachments. Because again, personally, if I'm playing a game that doesn't have a good story, but it's got a good multiplayer where me and the lads can get on, have a laugh and play together, I'm having a good time.
Yeah, having like 14 things of pasta in the room didn't fucking help either.
You can thank old mate Shrimp for that.
Yeah. Fucking hell.
Okay, don't fuck his head. Don't have food.
Now, continuing on for that, this again is another small nitpick, but why Ultramarines? It feels like the only Warhammer 40k game we don't play as Ultramarines when we are playing as Space Marines is Dawn of War, and I'd much rather play as a Blood Raven than an Ultrasmith any day. It could have been really cool that we pick whatever faction we want to play as, say, out of 9 to 10 factions. Salamanders could have been more proficient using flame-based weapons, and Raven Guard might have had access to, say, a jump hack. Black Templars might have unique melee weapons, Imperial Fist might have better defense, and then make the Ultramarine the jack-of-all-trades, master of none. Again, that's more of a small nitpick or a small idea if you do something in the future. But my personal thoughts aside, Boltgun is a fantastically made game. Its combat is pretty damn satisfying and it's classic in its gameplay. For Warhammer fans, especially Space Marine fans or fans of the Ultramarines, you'll love this. If you loved Space Marine that came out a few years ago, well, more than a few years ago, as I did, then you'll enjoy the Easter eggs in the game and this soft continuation from that. And I think it's safe to say that Boltgun might already take the cake for my indie game of the year, but I can also agree when people say it's the best shooter we'll have this year. Boltgun is available on everything, and if anything you've seen gives you a bit of an interest into the game, I'd say pick it up. But whether you've been slaying heretics since Horus fell, or you're new to the world of the Grimdark, always remember,
Abandon reason, know only war!
to play with each other and play with yourself.